we bring you a chilling short story titled Memegwesi. Grandpa, what's that? I pointed at one of the boulders on the riverbank. A hole had been carved in the center, just a few inches above the water's surface. About 2 feet tall, 1 foot long. It's just a natural formation, Emily. It doesn't look natural. The top was arched into a perfect circle, as if drilled by a machine or painstakingly carved by an artist. The bottom flattened out into a straight line. It looked deep, too. The sides of gray rock faded quickly into complete darkness. Maybe it's a rabbit burrow. Rabbits can't dig through stone. Grandpa sighed, pushing his paddle against the water. It made a gentle splash. I don't know what it is, but I think you'll have more fun if you don't think so much. He was right, of course. This was my once-a-year trip with Grandpa, to get away from the hustle and bustle of city life. I was supposed to relax and have fun, but I usually just ended up with 1,000 mosquito bites, ugly sunburn, and another weird story about my great-uncle Carl. Just close your eyes. Listen to the birds. Forget about everything, he said with a reassuring smile. I closed my eyes. I heard the chirps of birds, flitting from tree to tree. The steady splashes of Grandpa's paddle cutting through the water. The thump-thump-thump of footsteps across the grass. Footsteps? My eyes shot open. But when I whipped around to the shoreline, I only saw a deer, grazing several feet from the riverbank. Look at that deer, Grandpa said, steering the canoe towards the shore. Long grass poked out from the shore, brushed against my arms. Beautiful, isn't she? She's okay. What? You don't like her? I shrugged. I see deer all the time upstate. Well, I want to get a better look at her. Grandpa quietly paddled along the shore. Roots and rocks jutted from the dirt, nearly brushing the boat. I noticed 2 more holes, one in the moist dirt of the riverbank, the other carved into the trunk of an oak tree. I didn't point them out to Grandpa. Before we knew it, 15 minutes had passed. The forest grew darker, quieter. Gnarled trunks and branches stretched up to sky, blotting out the sunlight. I turned to Grandpa. His brows were furrowed in concern. The deer was nowhere to be seen. Where are we? I asked. Don't worry. We'll just go back the way we came. But as we paddled against the current, none of the surrounding forest looked familiar. Grandpa pulled out his phone and squinted at the screen. No service, he grunted, tossing it back in his bag. With every passing second, the forest seemed to get darker. The sunlight dimmed, the shadows stretched across the ground. The chirps of the birds faded into the gurgles of the water. We're lost. His silence confirmed it. I knew it. You have no idea where we are. We're not lost. We just haven't found our way back yet, he said in his calming, gentle tone. That sounds like lost to me. Emily, he said, please just relax. Enjoy this. Your time away from the city. Heh! You think I enjoy getting lost in the middle of nowhere? Getting eaten alive by mosquitoes? Hanging out with an old guy who doesn't even know how to use a smartphone? You know, Emily, when I was in middle school like you, we didn't have internet. We had. Just stop it, okay? I don't want to hear your stupid stories. I just want to go home. I stopped, hearing the sound of pattering footsteps. Fast, rapid, light. What was that? Just the deer, Em. But he looked concerned. Scared. He paddled us towards the center of the river, watching the forest with wide eyes. I clung to my seat. What if it's someone watching us? I glanced into the canoe. We had no weapons, just oars and some half-eaten peanut butter sandwiches. Thump! The sound didn't come from the forest this time. It came from the bottom of the boat. As if we just tapped a turtle or scraped a rock. Did we hit something? More tapping sounds. Soft and hollow, from the bottom of the boat. Grandpa's eyes widened. Go! Go! I grabbed the 2 small oars on the bottom of the boat. I plunged them into the water. The canoe cut through the current, racing across the surface as we both paddled. As the riverbank whooshed past us, I noticed more holes. In the soil, the trees, the rocks, staring back at us like dozens of eyes. Rapid taps sounded along the bottom of the boat, matching my pounding heart. I pulled the oars harder, faster. The water churned into white foam underneath me. Clunk! My paddle collided with something hard. I looked down to see something small and gray floating on the surface of the water. About 3 feet long and spindle-shaped. Splish splash. Splashes erupted around us. Fish? Birds? I thought. But when my eyes met Grandpa's, my heart plummeted. I'd never seen such a look of terror on my stoic grandfather's face. "It's too late," he muttered to himself. Too late. The boat rocked furiously underneath us. Then it tipped. I plunged into the cold, dark water. No sight. No sound. Just cold blackness all around. I thrashed and swam blindly, until my head broke the surface. I took in a gasp of breath. "Grandpa!" I screamed. The canoe floated on the surface of the river, slowly sinking. Grandpa was gone. "Grandpa!" That's when I felt it. A light touch, brushing across my leg. Under the water. I yanked it back and screamed. The touch multiplied. I felt touches, like tiny fingers, brushing my shoulders, my back, my legs. Something tugged me under. Icy water filled my nose. I kicked and thrashed, mouth open in a silent scream. Something was pulling me down, down, down. Strong hands grabbed my shoulders. Then I was lying on the shore, flat on my back, gasping for air. Beside me was the canoe, pulled into the wet dirt, and our bag of supplies. Grandpa leaned over me, an expression of horror cut into his face. "Emily, are you okay?" "I think so." I pulled myself up. The cold wind blew against my drenched clothes, my wet hair. "What happened?" "We need to get out of here." Motion caught my eye. I looked down. A short, flesh-colored creature dipped back into one of those strange holes, cut in the large oak tree. Some sort of hairless cat? Or weirdly colored lizard? "Grandpa? What's going on?" I asked. He didn't have a chance to reply. Thump, 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 the tiny, pattering footsteps again. This time, from the entire forest surrounding us. Grandpa grabbed my wrist and yanked me forward. We ran over the grass, over the rocks. The tiny footsteps faded into the wind. The evening calls of birds and low hum of crickets filled the air. "Grandpa? What's going on?" "Nothing," was all he muttered back. After several minutes of running, we stopped in a clearing. Grandpa leaned over a boulder, his breaths coming out in loud wheezes. I tugged at my shirt, still ice-cold against my body. The forest was silent and dark as night. "Best for us to set up here. If we go any further, we'll just get lost." He pulled at the backpack strapped to his shoulders. "We can go back for the canoe tomorrow." "You mean we're going to spend the night out here?" "I have before." He roughly opened the bag and pulled out a few blankets, a pile of snacks, and a lighter. "Good thing I decided to bring the waterproof backpack, huh? Here, get yourself into some dry clothes." He tossed me his spare shirt. I stared at him and felt the sting of tears. "Your clothes are wet too, though." "I'll live." He shouldered off his wet shirt and threw it into the dirt. Then he pulled the lighter out. A flickering, orange flame appeared. Soon we had a small fire going. The forest flickered with the flames, as if it were moving itself. I spread the blanket across the ground, lay on top of it. The rocks still bit into my back, and the soil still felt cold and wet. Somehow, despite the discomforts, I fell into a deep sleep. I woke with a start. For a second, I didn't remember where I was. But then I felt the wet hair against my neck, the rocks cutting into my back. What woke me up? I wondered. But then I heard it, the chilling note of a flute, piercing the air. Then another note, and another after it, piecing together to form a haunting, beautiful melody that rode on the wind like a lullaby. My eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness. An endless sea of black slowly became indigo sky, tangled branches, a scorched campfire. Listening to the melody, I yawned and rolled over. That's when I saw the feet. Small and fat, like a child's. Covered in thick, brown hair. I sat up, my heart pounding in my ears. I opened my mouth, but only a dry squeak came out. The humanoid figure took a step forward. It was about the height of a toddler, with all the wrong proportions. Long, stick-like legs. A flat, large face. Thin patches of hair that covered its face and body. And it was missing a nose. I tried to scream again. Only a low hiss came out. It leaned forward. Cold drops of water fell onto my face. It opened its mouth and spoke. "Come with us." Its voice was hushed and high-pitched, like the whine of a dragonfly. I backed away. The rocks cut into my hands. My feet tangled up in the blanket. "There is only sadness for you here," it rasped. As it spoke, I noticed several short shadows standing at the edge of the clearing, slowly closing in. "Only sadness, boredom, heartache. Come with us." It lay a cold, damp hand on my shoulder that felt like a child's. "No," I croaked. "Get away from me!" Those little black eyes turned from sympathy to fury. Tiny eyebrows furrowed, wrinkling a hairy forehead. The hand tightened its grip. "You will come with us," it growled in a deep voice. The rest of them ran forward and closed in. Cold, little hands grabbed my arms, my legs, my shoulders. And then they pulled. I slipped out of the blanket and skidded over the damp soil. Rocks scraped against my chest. They chittered excitedly among themselves, in a strange language that I couldn't understand. Warm, rotten breath wafted over my face. I took in a deep gulp of air. "Grandpa!" I shouted. "Grandpa!" A rustling sound from across the campfire. Then the flicker of an orange flame. I fell hard into the soil. The creatures scattered, disappearing into the shadows of the forest. Grandpa stood up. The orange light threw his face into harsh relief. He brandished it like a sword, walking through the clearing. With each whoosh, the shadows retreated. I couldn't tell if they were just shadows, or some of them scampering back home. Finally, he stopped in the center of the clearing. "They're all gone now, Emily." I ran over to him, buried my face in his shoulder. "Grandpa, I'm so sorry. For what I said to you. For everything. For SSSSHH. It's okay." What were those things?" "Memegwesi. I've never seen anything like them." I grabbed the blanket off the forest floor and wrapped it around my shoulders. "They look so human. Almost like children." "They're not human," Grandpa replied, with bite in his voice. "Not human at all." He sighed and bent down to relight the fire. "I thought we were safe. They usually don't stray this far from the water. But I should have known that they'd follow us." "Why?" The fire crackled to life. He sat in front of it, hands stretched out towards it. "Do you remember those mushrooms I found in the woods last year? And you were terrified I'd poison myself by eating them?" I nodded. "I found them in these woods. What I didn't know is that they were planted by the Memegwesi. In the weeks after I took them, I found little footprints around the cabin. My stuff started disappearing. Garden tools, bags of birdseed, anything they could get their hands on outside my house. But they saw it didn't bother me." He looked up and gave me a small smile. "So I guess they decided to try and steal the thing that means the most to me. I'm sorry, Grandpa." "Don't be sorry. It's not your fault. I'm the one who took their damn mushrooms in the first place." He poked the fire. It sparked and flickered. "Try to get some sleep, okay? I'll keep watch until dawn." "Okay, Grandpa." I wrapped the blanket around myself, and after almost an hour, finally drifted into a deep sleep. In the morning, we headed back down to the river. The canoe was as we left it, dragged up onto the shoreline. As we got close, Grandpa's face fell. "Where are the oars?" Tiny footprints scattered the sand, around 2 oar-shaped imprints. "Damn it," Grandpa muttered. "Okay. We'll have to walk back, along the riverbank. Get back to the car. We'll worry about all this later. Let me just get my bag out. Grandpa grabbed the side of the canoe and began to lift. Grandpa! Stop! I screamed. In the sliver of shadow underneath, 2 dark eyes glinted out, glinting with fury. Then the forest thundered with footsteps, much louder than yesterday. Small brown shapes started out of holes in the trees, the rocks, the soil. Shadows converged on the horizon, darting between the trees, forming a crowd. An army. Run! Grandpa yanked me forward. We ran along the riverbank, my feet slipping over the stones and mud. The entire forest shook underneath us. We're not going to make it! I shouted. We don't even know where we are! We'll make it! He shouted back. The river roiled and churned. Dark shapes flitted underneath the surface, like enormous fish closing in on their next meal. We ran as fast as we could. My legs ached, my lungs burned. And then, suddenly, the forest cleared. We dove into his truck and locked the doors. I coughed and panted. Grandpa wheezed. He fished the keys out of his pocket and stuck them in the ignition. Then he turned to me. Promise me one thing, Emily. What? Don't tell your mother about any of this. Deal? Deal, I replied with a smile. A few days later, I left Grandpa's. I promised to visit him again over the holidays. A year was too long to wait. He gave me a tight hug, and Mom and I began the trip back to the city. Over the coming weeks, I tried to forget about the Memegwesi. But it was difficult. They lived in my nightmares and fears. Sometimes I woke up with the thump-thump-thump of their little footsteps still pounding in my ears. Sometimes I swore I could feel their warm breath on my face. One night in September, I woke from a particularly horrible nightmare. In it, I was back in the forest, sleeping in that dark, cold clearing. The fire had long been reduced to embers, and in the purple shadows, I could just make out the form of a short figure standing over me. I woke up gasping for air. I jumped out of bed and flicked on the lights, my entire body shaking. That's when I saw them. On the carpet, right next to my bed, were 2 wet imprints, shaped like little feet.